Hey YouTube, Skipper T here, part 2 on starting to become a prepper. There are also some other things other than, as I mentioned in the previous video, food storage and water storage, which I think are absolutely important and probably the greatest place to start. The second question I was asked is, what kind of equipment should I carry? Should I buy a gun? Should I buy a crossbow? What type of armament should I carry? Or should I be more concerned with being able to carry, as Juan, hey Juan, I'll say this to you again, bud. He commented on one of my YouTube channels, or videos rather. Another tough question. Self-defense is something that you have to decide whether that's more important than being able to take care of yourself, to clothe and feed yourself, these kinds of things. I will say this about guns to begin with. Number one, if you're going to buy a gun, a handgun is a nice option, okay? But it's for close-in support. You're basically a maximum of 20 yards out and closer for a handgun. If you buy a handgun and you are not an individual that's ever owned one or has very little experience with it, please go out, search on the NRA's website, the National Rifle Association's website, and find a local beginner handgun course. It is worth its weight in gold. It will teach you things. Most military and most police organizations don't even get that much information. It's typically an 8-hour class with about 3 hours on the range to qualify for it. But a decent NRA instructor is going to take you from zero knowledge to being a competent individual that can handle a handheld firearm. The other option that I would say is available to you would be a shotgun. Yes, there's been a lot of jokes about that since some of our politicians have made mention of this, but I'm going to tell you that a 12-gauge shotgun, and there are two of them out there that I kind of recommend right off the top, basically due to functionality and price point. The first one I'm going to mention is the Remington 870. It is a very nice 12-gauge shotgun. You can get these on sale for about $325 to about $370. It's an absolutely beautiful gun. The components in them, they're solid. They will last you a lifetime. The second one that I would mention would be the Mossberg Maverick 88. I just looked this up on Walmart's website this morning. You can order this gun for about $200. The parts are interchangeable with the Mossberg 500s. The tolerances on that weapon are probably not quite as tight as they are on the Remington 870, but again, this is a solid piece of hardware. Time-tested, time-proven, and quite frankly, it's quite a bit less money to spend up front, but you're still getting a good gun. You can buy different lengths of barrels with that particular weapon. It'll hold 5 rounds in the chamber, or correction, 5 rounds in the magazine, and 1 in the chamber. So it's a 5+1 as they call it. But it's a solid gun with a fantastic reputation that's out there. The type of armament that you decide to use is entirely up to you. The question was posed, well, what about a crossbow? Crossbows are absolutely wonderful. Problem with a crossbow is if you go out to the sporting goods store and handle one, they can be heavy. They can be every bit, if not heavier, than a shotgun. A lot heavier than a handgun. But again, they're quiet, they're effective, they're high speed, they're very strong. But then again, now you've got to carry arrows, and arrows are a certain length, they don't get smaller. There are some that break down, but then again, I think you're losing the strength of the actual shaft of the arrow itself. Personally, I have the Samick Sage Recurve. It's on another video that I've shot here. The thing I like about that particular bow is I can take what's called the limbs, and those are the springy parts of the recurve bow. I can take those off, and each piece is 19 inches long. Now I've got something that I can fold up, tie the bowstring around it, and it'll actually fit in my backpack. Armament versus what we call the 5 C's, it's a trade-off as to what should come first, and that's going to be up to the individual to decide. Personally, I think what's far more important as far as the sequence of prepping would be to do what we call the 5 C's. These are the basic things in any kind of a bug out kit, anything that you're going to prepare yourself with. You need to start with this. Number 1, you have to have a cutting tool. What's a cutting tool? It's a knife or a hatchet, primarily a knife. Maybe a secondary thing would be a hatchet to go along with that. Personally, I prefer the tomahawk. You can see that in one of my other videos. The second thing that you're going to have is you're going to have cover. You have got to get yourself out of the elements. You've got to get out of the wind, the rain, the snow. Heck, you got to get under cover if the sun's beating down and it's just, burning you up. The 5 C's are designed to control your core body temperature, okay? If you can't control this, you don't stand a chance, all right? The next thing that you're going to need right here is a combustion device, okay? Somehow you need to make a fire, all right? Fire is absolutely critical, whether it's in the dead of summer or whether it's in the dead of winter, okay? You're going to be able to boil water. You're going to be able to dry clothing after a rain. You're going to be able to cook food and meat over a fire. You absolutely have to have a source of combustion or a way to make a fire, okay? Now, one of the next things you're going to have is a container. What good is a fire to disinfect water or to try to cook food if you don't have a container in which you can put over a fire and get that done? Now, granted, you catch a squirrel, you catch a rabbit, you can put it over a green stick and, roast them over the fire and just eat it like you would a set of ribs right off of, the rib rack, so to speak. But you're going to need to be able to do that, and you're going to have a container. The container is going to do multiple things for you, and we'll discuss that here in a minute. The last thing that you're going to need is cordage, okay? And cordage is any kind of line that's out there. You're going to need that to suspend things. If you're going to make a cover or a shelter out of like a tarp or something like that, somehow you're going to have to tie that thing off, and you're going to need the cordage. Dave Canterbury on the Wilderness Outfitters website does a very good job of explaining the 5 C's, and that's the basics and the basic premise for his entire, that's how he started the whole video sequence that he has out there. Last time I checked, he had over 317,000 subscribers and had over 50 million views on his website. And I know that's true because, well, I've watched probably thousands of those myself. I'll put a link down below so that you can go to it. To start your prepping exercises, this is what you need to get started. Now, I have these items listed out here on the table behind me, and we'll go through each one of these one at a time, and I'll show you an example of each one of those. Stay with me, and I'll get it zoomed in so that we can see what's going on. Okay, guys, first thing on our list here is the cutting tool, okay? I hope you guys can see this. In today's example, I am showing you the Old Hickory butcher knife. You can order these. In fact, I got this one from Ace Hardware. I ordered it because they didn't have any in stock. It was, I think, $7 or $8. A couple of nice things about it. It's got a 7-inch blade. You have to have what I consider to be a minimum would be a 6-inch blade. It's a full tang knife, which means the entire blade runs the entire length of the handle. I'm hoping you can kind of see that goes in there. The handle's made out of wood, a hickory of some kind. Now this one is actually just put on with some brass rivets. The thing that I like about this knife is it's big enough to do everything around your camp that you need done. Plus it's a 1095 carbon steel, which means that eventually you could, stick it down with a piece of char cloth or lint or Vaseline soaked cotton ball underneath. You could hit it with a piece of flint, piece of chert. It will create sparks because it is the 1095 carbon steel. Again, this is a $7, $8 knife. Great way to get started. The other thing that a lot of people overlook is the fact that you've probably got a drawer at home full of cutting knives for, cutting the foods that you eat. Those knives will work just as well. They're probably not going to be as tough out in the wilderness as something like this. And this particular knife is probably not this knife itself, but this company's been making these for, God, 50, 60, 100 years. I've got a couple of these I've inherited from my grandparents who have since passed. But they're, you know, as long as you take care of them, they'll do great. Don't let them rust like I did this one. Unfortunately, I'd left this out in my garage. I've gotten a little bit of corrosion on it. But I'll buff all that back out. I'll use some rubbing compounds. I'll get everything squared away on it. I did round and square off the back here so that it's got a good sharp angle. So if I'm hitting a ferrocerium rod, which I'll show you here in a little bit, I can get a good spark with that. The only other thing I would do on this was I would knock these handles off, pry them off here. Go ahead and split the little rivet that's holding it together. It'll come apart pretty easily. Clean the handle up underneath, and I would get a 2-part epoxy. I would glue the handles back on. I would fill these rivets with that epoxy. I would squeeze those back together. I'd put them in a vise or under a clamp, let it sit there for a couple of days and dry good. Your handle won't come off at that point. It will, because of this type of rivet, eventually get loose and fall off. So I would recommend doing that extra work. For a $7 knife and about $3 to $5 for some epoxy, you know, now you got what, $13, $14, $15 invested in it. You can't go wrong, and it's a good solid knife. And with that 1095 carbon steel, it's going to take you a long way, okay? One thing you can do is you can go to your local hardware or your hobby store rather, buy some leather scraps, you buy a bag of them for $3, and you can make your own sheath with this, or for this particular knife rather. There are a lot of videos that are out there, and in fact, I'm gonna, when it warms up a little bit and I can sit outside, I'll show you how to make one of those, but it's gonna be a little bit. The other thing you can offset with this knife to give it greater utility is a good old, what we call a baton. Now you can take this larger knife, you could take a 4-inch piece of wood very easily, pound this knife down through that. Now you can split firewood with this as well. That's another reason why you want a knife that's at least 6 inches long, so that you can go through a 4-inch round piece of wood, break it into smaller pieces so that you can, you know, open that up and get a fire going. It's very difficult to make a 4-inch round piece of wood catch on fire unless you've got an absolutely hot coal base going already. You may need to split wood in a survival situation, and this knife will do it. It's 1/8 of an inch thick here. It's got that 7-inch blade on it. 1095 carbon steel, you can't go wrong. Next thing I'm going to show you guys is some coverage. Hang on while I slide this over. Next thing that we're going to talk about is a cover. What you're looking at here is just your basic 9x12, $4.95 tarp from Walmart. This particular tarp has the orange interior in it, which can be used as a signaling device, okay? Some of them have silver material on the inside, and you can use that to reflect heat back from a fire. You'll notice here that in all of the eyelets that are around the edge of this particular tarp, I always tie off a little bit of paracord on here. You could use paracord, you can use bank line, whatever the case may be. That way, if you need to tie it off in between a couple of trees, you've got a good spot where you can tie off. If you need to stake this part down into the ground, now you're not trying to fit a little stake inside this small little rivet hole here. You can go into whatever size loop that you tie around this. A 9x12 is pretty decent because you could leave, you could set it up on an angle so that it was like an L shape, but at an angle. You could leave 4 feet down on the ground, so now that you've got a ground cloth, plus you've got the lean-to portion, so it's sitting, you know, kind of like this, and you'd be able to sit underneath, sit on a ground cloth, insulate yourself from the ground, stay above wet ground, whatever the case may be. A 9x12 is not quite as easy to set up as a square tarp for multiple configurations, but nonetheless, you can do a heck of a lot of things with a 9x12 tarp, and it is, you know, it's $4.95 at Walmart. I would suggest, and I'm just going to throw this out there, they make another tarp. It's about 10 mil thick, whereas this is, you know, super thin type material. This would last about 1 season. They make one that's about a 10 mil, which is a lot thicker, a lot heavier, and it has the reinforced grommets, both going down the sides and on each of the 4 corners. That tarp's going to run you about $9, $10, maybe $12. Not a bad investment to have a 9x12 tarp. So again, you can get out of the elements. You can get out from under the sun. You can get out from under the wind, the rain, the snow, whatever the case may be. I don't have one here because I use some other options, but there are also 2-man pup tents. They're a little, A-frame style tent with a couple of little poles that hold it up. You've seen them, the Boy Scouts have them. You see the backpackers carrying them and things like that. They're absolutely beautiful. It'll hold 2 people, some of your gear inside. But the nice thing about that is it's got bug netting on it. It's got a bathtub bottom. It's got a neoprene bottom on it. The ability to zip it completely shut. So if you're worried about bugs and snakes and spiders, scorpions, whatever the case may be, you can crawl fully inside that, be fully encased. Usually they've got, a window on one end and then the opening that you go through so you can get some good ventilation with it. The difference between that and the 9x12 tarp here is probably about $20 to $25 in cost. This particular tarp weighs, I don't know, maybe a pound, pound and a half at the most. Most of these 2-man pup tents with the tent and the stakes and everything, they're going to weigh about 3 pounds. Not a bad deal, and it's an absolutely excellent choice that's out there, but you have to decide whether you want to carry the tent like that or you want to carry a tarp like this. The other thing I did not mention, which I think is imperative, is you have to buy some kind of a stake. I tell you what, you can buy any camping store, you can buy a 6-inch yellow camping stake, okay? And you can get 6 of them for about $2.75. That's what I carry in my pack with the DD Hammocks 3-meter by 3-meter tarp that I use, and I've done 4 or 5 videos on how to set that up, but I do carry those yellow stakes, both for this application. They fit through my little tie-outs that I put on here, and they also work with that other tarp. But to get started, $5, you're on your way. You can always add stuff, pile brush and leaves around it to help, stop the wind, the rain from coming in the sides. But this is a great way to just get started. The next thing that we've got on our hit parade here is what we call a combustion tool. All right, guys, next we've got the combustion tool, okay? First and foremost, the venerable Bic lighter, all right? These things, they're fabulous. They've been around for years and years and years. The only problem with a Bic lighter is it's life limited, okay? And when it gets to be under 32 degrees outside, you've got to shake them up. You've got to warm them up in order for the fluid that's in them to turn into a gas and then ignite when you flick it, okay? So one drawback to them, life limited, and you've got to heat that gas or the liquid up so that it'll actually turn into a gas and ignite. The other thing you can do, the ferrocerium rod. I've demonstrated this in multiple videos before. This particular one comes with a striker on it so that you don't even really need the backside of a knife to do that. It's even got some teeth right here, serrated edges. You run that down the length of this ferrocerium rod. Once you get that black coating off, it's going to throw sparks like nobody's business. Drop that on a piece of lint. Put it on one of those Vaseline soaked cotton balls that I've showed you previously. This will start a fire in virtually any conditions, wet, dry, whatever the case may be. You really can't beat this, okay? But it is life limited. Every time you strike it, you take a little bit more off. So have multiples, keep spares. The other side is the venerable flint and steel. My absolute favorite way to start a fire. I get this particular one off the Wilderness Outfitters website. I like the fact that it's thick through here. I like the way it wraps around. Allows me to get a good grip on it here. If I'm striking up against the stone, it'll make a good spark off of that. And it's good protection for your knuckles because this keeps it far enough away. They sell 2 varieties on their website. This one's about, $14, $15. But I'm never going to leave home without it. It's my absolute favorite way to start a fire. If the flint that comes with it wears out, you can always get a piece of chert or a piece of stone that will strike the fire. I'm not sure if you can see this, but if you can see that kind of milky texture to the stone itself, that tells you you've got a pretty good piece of chert right here. This is some of the limestone that it's encased in usually. It fractures with sharp edges on it like that. See how it's just dipped out this whole thing and it's got these long linear cracks in it? That's a pretty good indication that this would be a good piece of stone to hit up against your flint and steel. If flint is not an indigenous stone, where are you going to find something like this where you live? Anywhere that there's a dirt road or along the railroad tracks, because all of that's been imported and poured along there for miles and miles and miles. And sooner or later, you're going to find pieces of rock that will create a spark up against this piece. And this is 1095 carbon steel as well, just like the knife that we mentioned earlier. So these are my 3 favorite things to carry in a pack. For the combustion source, the lighter, the ferrocerium rod, the flint and steel. The flint and steel being my absolute favorite way to start a fire. The next thing that we need to consider is cordage, okay? Cordage is so that you can hang your tarp, so that you can suspend things from a tree, your pack, whatever the case may be. This is 550 paracord, okay? 7 strands, 7 individual strands on the inside. You can kind of see the whiteness that's in the end of that there. I'm hoping you can see that. But that consists of 7 strands, and each one of those strands is a 3 braided strand. You pull this cover off the outside, you can take those 7 apart. You can take the 7 and break down the 3 individual strands in each one of the 7s. You can sew with them, you can make fishing line with it. There's a lot of things you can do. Plus the fact that this is, 550 pounds of breaking strength on this. The only problem that I see with paracord, 1, this outer shell is slippery, and B, it's kind of bulky. The other option, and I think it's a fabulous one, again, you can get this on the Wilderness Outfitters website. This is bank line. This is number 36 bank line. Okay, this is the thicker of the stuff. This is a 1-pound roll. Costs about $18, maybe $19. But you get 510 linear feet with it, and it has a 340-pound breaking strength. Plus, if you notice, because it's tarred, it's got stiffness. That just doesn't flop over. If I put a bend in it, the bend pretty much stays right in it. You can use this for fishing, lashing. Everything you can do with a piece of paracord, you can do with this. This is a 1-pound roll, 510 feet. And as you can see, 510 foot of paracord would take a lot more space than what this particular cordage does. But these are 2 of thousands of options that are available. Choose the one that works best for you. I carry a little bit of both. I like this stuff. When you smell that, it's got a tarry smell to it. But again, it's a 3-strand braided type line. You can unravel each one of those, and then each one of those you can break those fibers apart. You can use it for fishing, for sewing, for stitching, and then just as regular line to hang your tarp, to make a shelter, hang your pack off the ground and keep the rodents and the critters out of getting your food and stuff like that. Absolutely imperative, one of the 2 of those, or in combination. $18 for 510 feet. For $7 or $8, you can buy 100 feet of paracord. You're covered. That's going to cover every contingency you can possibly imagine. Well, I won't put it that way. It's going to cover a lot of things that are out there if you have this type of material with you. At least it's going to get you to where you're going, to where you can be safe again, start to rebuild everything. Last thing on our list, sports fans, is the container. You've got to have a way to boil water, okay? Boiling water is probably one of the most effective ways that are out there to disinfect water. Once you boil water, it will kill 99.9% of the pathogens, the bacteria, the nasty stuff that's out there. The only thing it's not going to take out of there is going to be chemical runoffs from farm fields and radiation. On that, well, we're all going to just have to deal with that one way or another. 32-ounce bottle like this is designed specifically for water purification tablets. They're designed to work with 32 ounces or 1 U.S. quart. I love this bottle here. It works great. You've seen it in some of my other videos. In fact, I shot a video recently where I made a cup of tea in this particular can here. I love this thing. Comes with the lid that's on it. Again, it's got a D-ring that'll stand up. It's got the straining ports that are down inside here. It's got these for that fish mouth spreader that you saw in the other videos when I made the cup of tea. You can put that right on top. You know, you could make your ramen noodles, pour off extra water here. You could boil a little bit of spaghetti, pour the water off, throw in some ragu, and now you've got this is actually a 27-ounce cup. It'll actually hold 25 ounces up to, let's see if you can see that in there. But right in here, there's some graduation marks. But you can put 25 ounces of water, and that ends up coming to about, you know, quarter to a half an inch below the actual lid itself. But you have to have a way to disinfect the water anywhere you are, because hydration is key. Remember the rule of threes. 3 hours of exposure can kill you. 3 days without water will kill you. 30 days without food can kill you. So, you know, hydration, when you look at it, you know, shelter and hydration are going to be absolutely necessity items that are out there. And with a good stainless steel, titanium, heck, even the aluminum cups that are out there, something, somehow, some way that you can disinfect and then keep track of, or rather consume, at least disinfected water. These are the 5 C's that are associated with taking care of yourself. All right, guys. Those are the 5 C's. As I listed on the clipboard, hopefully you guys will be able to read that from here. It's an absolute necessity. This is the baseline for prepping. Everybody should carry something like this with them at all times. I don't know about you guys, but when I go to work, I am 10 to 12 hours from home every day. Not distance travel, just how long I'm away from home. If anything happens in that first half of the day and I'm not home, I've got to be able to get there. If it takes me 1, 2, 3 days to get there, at least with these 5 items, the cutting tool, your cover, your combustion device, your cordages, and your containers, I stand a pretty darn good chance of getting there. But I hope these 2 videos kind of answer some of the questions that you might have on how to get started in prepping and where some of the thought processes are as to how to get started. Bear in mind, this is my opinion only, okay? There's 1,000 different views out there and 1,000 different answers. But hopefully this gives you something to think about. Appreciate you guys watching the video. We'll see you out in the woods.